Back, or welcome for the first time if this is the first time you're watching this or listening to this. This is the SitRep, the situation report, where some random bearded dude on the internet goes through news stories that he's found over the past 24 to 48 hours that I happen to find interesting. No, this is from the perspective of prepping. So if you're a person who is concerned about the future, maybe not, that's not the right way to put it. If you're somebody who wants to prudently plan for potential possible problems in the future, which I think is a wise thing to do, then you're in the right spot if you're that kind of person. Because what I'm going to do is look at some stories and have a think about this. Mainly, I guess the point here is to kind of get the gist of what's happening in the world at the moment, what the situation is, and then also to use some examples from the news to how we can best prepare ourselves and move towards being more self-reliant human beings, which is what my shtick is all about. So anyway, thank you again for joining me, all of you. Whether you are watching this on Instagram, on YouTube, or listening on the podcast. Greetings to you, Reagan, from YouTube land. Hope you're well. Anyway, didn't get one out yesterday, so it's been 48 hours. It's been a lot of news. Let's kick it off. There's obviously some big news that's happened over in the Russian area, but I won't start with that. I'll start in our neck of the woods in New Zealand. I'm in Australia, by the way, just in case anyone got confused there, but I do consider New Zealand my neck of the woods. They've just raised the alert level for one of their volcanoes, which is actually a lake. So I've been to this lake. This is Lake Topor, or that's how I was told it was actually pronounced by the locals. I went there and hunted with a mate's family over there and around there. And Topor is allegedly how it's supposed to be pronounced, but if you were to read it, it would be Taupo. So a lot of people call it like Taupo, but it's actually Topor, apparently. Please correct me, my New Zealand friends, if I am off the mark there. Good morning to you, Jennifer and Advisor 2021-9. Good to have you guys back. Right, so this huge lake, okay, this is actually not just a volcano, this is technically a supervolcano. You might have heard of that term before, supervolcanoes. It's this thing that bounces around in circles like mine of doomsday preppers where we're like, what if a supervolcano goes off? We're all fucked. Yeah, well, this is one of them. It apparently last went off 1,800 years ago, 1,800 years ago. So in the year 200 or thereabouts, if my maths is correct. And it created a lake, a huge lake. That's how big this thing is. It's a massive, massive volcano. Apparently, yeah, they've had about 700 small earthquakes detected around the area, and they've gone from, it's a scale out of 6 when you're rating volcanoes. Why not? I guess they're just trying to be different. Let's make it out of 6. 6, yeah, that sounds good. It went from 0 to 1. So it's not earth shattering. It's not like the end of the world. It's not the end times or anything like that. It's just gone up one step. But it's still concerning, especially if you're living in and around this area. A lot of seismic activity in New Zealand at the best of times, but obviously just a lot of seismic activity happening in the world at the moment. So this is actually this supervolcano is responsible for the world's largest eruption in the past 5,000 years. So this was that eruption that happened, I think, 1,800 years ago. But yeah, interesting stuff happening over in New Zealand. What's happening in Australia, though? This was some good news that was sent to me from, potentially good news, sent to me from one of my sources on Instagram. Anthony Albanese, our current beloved leader of this great nation, is allegedly starting to get his head around AdBlue. So Labor's got a plan, a $50 million plan to keep trucks moving. They're going to buy a national stockpile and will co-fund the development of manufacturing of diesel exhaust fluid. let's hope that they continue on that path and keep doing that, because that is a critical supply chain issue that could pretty much bring the entire society to a grinding halt. I've talked about that ad nauseum before. I haven't really put things in order here, so I'll just jump into the next big thing. Obviously, developing in the past really 24 hours is this whole Russia thing. So if you've had your head in the sand about this, you might want to pull it out now. There was a lot of talk all of a sudden that, hey, Putin's about to do some sort of speech, something's going on here. Wait, they've just passed a law. It looks like, these are to do with war. And then he came out and essentially it was exactly that. So Russia has taken a very, very much more of a standing into a warlike nation now. In that they've passed a few laws. So Russian lawmakers in their state Duma passed legislation introducing the concepts of mobilization, martial law, and wartime into criminal code. So essentially what they've done there is said, hey, things like deserters, if you're deemed a deserter, that's a crime now. So you don't really have those kind of laws for the general public unless you're looking at getting some more of the general public into your military, which is essentially what they're doing. So this is like, if you've seen this and it's all like, World War III is happening, just pump the brakes a little bit. This isn't Russia mobilizing all their troops. This isn't Russia going into conscription or anything like that and pulling normal members out of public, although there is a caveat for that too. This is essentially them saying, hey, all reserve forces, so people who are already in the military but are not full-time military, you're now on notice to move. You now could move. They've got about 2 million reserve members, and they've said around about 300,000. So the report that I saw that came out of their defense minister said that they're calling up about 300,000 of the 2 million potential people that they could call from. So it's not like all guns go. It is a big first step. The other part of it was, and I'll see if I can actually find this because I want to get the wording right, of who they're actually bringing in. There's other stuff to do with their military industrial complex, so ramping that up, so production of military sort of stuff, so shifting companies away from like, whatever you're doing, we need you to do military stuff now. Where did it go? I definitely had this. Partial mobilization is announced in Russia today. Only those citizens who are in the reserve and, above all, those who served in the armed forces and have certain military specialities and relevant experience will be subject to conscription. Technically speaking, this is where Australia is at too. Like we're not quite at that point, but as a technical point, the Australian government could do this too. They could go, all right, we're pulling in our reserve forces, and we need people in this with this particular experience and these qualifications within the military. We're pulling you in. You are now part of the full-time army. Australia has that ability. So, like I said, this is a big sign to the world. Like, whoa, hang on, yep, Russia's doing, what we kind of thought they would do, but it's not like Russia's flying planes and dropping paratroopers into Washington DC. All right, there's good and bad in this. A lot of this is propaganda still. A lot of this is a lot of fluff from both sides because. The West now has an opportunity to go, look how bad they are. They're doing the war thing. And from the Russian side, they can sort of go like, yep, we're taking this seriously. We're ramping this up. Like, it's a bit of a like, hey, come on, world. Ball's in your court now, NATO. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Because there's a couple of other interesting things that lead into this as well. First off, that I'll talk about. Yes, Putin did come out. No, all right. Putin did not come out and say, I will nuke you. Putin did come out and allude to that. So I don't think I have the quote here in front of me, but essentially it was something like this. we have the ability to cause mass destruction. If we feel it's necessary, we will use those abilities. Okay, so that's what he said. Read between the lines. And that's pretty much what Biden did. He read between the lines and he said, like, don't you dare use your nukes. And a lot of other people come out and said that. Interestingly, one of the more vocal people who've come out and said that is Erdogan from Turkey. So this is Turkey's leader has come out and issued a direct warning to Russia that not only should they not be ramping up, but that Putin needs to leave all occupied areas, the LRP, the DRP, and the Crimea theaters there. Russia needs to get out. Which is, quite an interesting thing. Like, when I saw that, I was like, wait, what? Why is Turkey saying this? What's going on here? What's actually happening behind the scenes here? Because, again, this is a classic example for me to where I try and look at what they're doing, not at what they're saying. And I think this is exactly what Turkey's done here. I think, what is Turkey doing? Well, they seem to be more and more economically tied in with Russia and very happy to kind of be pro-Russia. And then they've come out and said this. Well, saying it is one thing. What you're doing is another thing. And I think this also has to do with Turkey is trying to 4D chess its way into a conflict at the moment as well. With Greece. So they're looking at Greece and they're going, okay, Greece is part of NATO. When push comes to shove, who's NATO, who's Europe going to support? Is it going to be Turkey or is it going to be Greece? Probably going to be Greece. How do we make this a bit more palatable for them? How do we make it look like we're the good guys here? Yes, we'll come out, shake our fists, do the virtue signaling thing and be like, yes, Russia, bad, Russia, leave. And of course, like, what does this actually do? Putin would look at this and just be like, anyway, continue. Like, it would have no effect. And at the end of the day, I don't think Turkey's going to actually do anything to back this up. I think they're going to continue to kind of profit, I guess, off the cheap Russian gas, oil, and other resources that are coming out at the moment. So other things that are important here. The LPR, I think I said LRP before, the LPR and the DPR, which are those two contested areas which actually kicked off this entire conflict, right? It was under the guise of them wanting to be liberated from Ukraine. That is why Russia actually moved into Ukraine in the first place. Then everything got quite muddied. At no point can I ever remember Putin ever coming out and saying, I want to take over Ukraine. I remember a lot of the West propaganda saying this. He's trying to take over Ukraine. Look, he didn't get Kiev. Yeah, we've beaten him back. There was no stated goal that Russia was ever interested in that. Their stated goal was LPR and DPR independence. Now the interest, and they have done that, as in they've occupied these two areas and the Crimea. Now, the interesting thing that's about to happen now, as of tomorrow, is the LPR came out and said they're going to hold a referendum on, as an independent state, on joining the Russian Federation. So that was quickly followed by the DPR, also saying that, yes, we too will hold a referendum to see if we're going to join the Russian Federation. So that's starting tomorrow, their time, as in the 23rd. That's pretty interesting. Also, when we take that step back and go, and Russia's ramping up its military ability. And we've also had Belarus starting to increase rhetoric, but also mobilize military elements. So, yeah, okay, what's going on here? They're expecting a fight, clearly. There's one more piece to add to this. Zaporizhia region, which is, for those who don't know what that is, that's that huge nuclear power plant. That region there that houses that nuclear power plant, the biggest in Europe, which has been occupied by Russia now for a number of weeks. Well, they have come out and said, you know what? We're going to hold a referendum on joining Russia. That I find very interesting. And considering what I've been talking about with the energy crisis and what my thoughts and beliefs are on nuclear power at this point in time, I think it's very interesting that the largest nuclear power plant, which is currently in Russian hands as occupied territory, might actually try and legitimize their hold on it. So Russia's going to try and legitimize their hold and secure that power, which obviously, I mean, that hasn't been pumping power out to Europe allegedly since 2 weeks ago. But that obviously makes the energy crisis more tenuous within Europe, which gives Russia more soft power within this war. Again, if you're looking at war and still just thinking it's tanks and individual battles and guys dropping out of planes and stuff, you need to step up into 2022 and figure out what real war now is. We're 5th generation warfare now, and the battle space is everywhere. The battle space is in your Instagram, and it's in the memes that you laugh at. Be aware of that. It is everywhere, and it is this soft power. It is this ability for someone like Russia to go, oh, you're sanctioning us? Okay, cool. Well, we're just going to sell this here. Hey, you know what? Thank you for that, because we've now made more money in this past 7 months than we have in the preceding year or two before that. That's because of your sanctions. So hope that's working out for you. Or what's not working out for you? You guys going to freeze to death this winter? Ooh, that's tough. Oh. But this is the kind of like chess playing that's actually going on here. Warfare isn't just bombs and bullets. Warfare is now trade. Warfare is social media. Warfare is everywhere. Can't stress that enough. It is everywhere. So the UN, no, sorry, not the UN, the EU is probably rightly concerned about this situation right now, and they're going to hold an emergency meeting of foreign ministers, which will be held in New York on Wednesday, New York time, which should be like soon, very soon. So, and this is directly in response to this entire mobilization of that Russia's undergoing at the moment. So, yeah, wait and see what happens from that. I'll be keeping my eyes on any news coming out of that EU meeting of their foreign ministers and see what they're going to come up with. Probably nothing good. All right, let's talk about Europe as well. Over to Moldova now. I thought these were some interesting stories coming out of Moldova. Moldova runs out of cash to pay Gazprom being the large Russian gas company, to pay their August bill. So they've basically come out, where was the numbers? I don't have the numbers here, but they've basically come out and said, look, we're not going to be able to pay, it was like 18 million, maybe. They scraped together 14. I mean, is Moldova passing a hat around at the moment? What's going on there? A bit of a scare for them as well. I mean, this is just adding into the picture that we're seeing Moldova now becoming another country, yet another country in Europe that's going to be affected by this gas crisis, this energy crisis. And then I saw this story almost directly after it. Moldova launches firewood distribution website amid the historic energy crisis. So they've got a website where you can go in there and click, find your nearest forest bypass. The site provides information about the nearest forestry, thus facilitating the process of providing the population with firewood for heating. Like a total admission, like, hey, we're not going to be able to heat you here. You need to go cut down some trees now. Basically, they're telling the public, like, look, you need to go source your own way to heat yourself this winter. That's where it's at. This is to me, I'm reading that and going like, wow, Moldova's government just basically went, can't do it. It's up to you guys now. Good luck. Sharpen your saws. What else we got here? All right, here's some random stuff from around the world. Myanmar is to favor Ruble and Yuan. I'm always interested in these sort of stories where I'm seeing countries start to do deals in Chinese yuan, Russian rubles, even Indian rupees, rubies, rubies. I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, India's currency. Anyway, it just shows us this shift that we are living through right now, where we're seeing the death of the dollar, even though the dollar's been going great guns against every currency. I think it might be running out of steam. I'm talking about the US dollar, of course, not Australian dollaroos. Ours has run out of steam, allegedly. I'm just watching the price of it. I think it dropped down to 66 or something this morning against the US dollar. So US dollar's still got some run in it, I think, depending on what happens in the future. But we're seeing a lot of what we would have thought as under table dealings going on and would have been cracked down on in the past. And now the ability to crack down on them is not there. And they're just being done over the table now. It's overt. A lot of countries are going, you know what? We don't want to be bullied. We don't want to be hemmed in by the US petrodollar. We're going our own way. Interesting stuff. Angelina Jolie is to visit flood-ravaged Pakistan. So we can declare the Pakistan flood crisis over. A Hollywood movie star is heading there. So why did it take so long for a Hollywood movie star to get there? That's what I want to know. Don't they know they have the ability and the powers to fix everything? I don't know. I just look at this sort of stuff. I'm like, who gives a fuck? Why are you putting this in front of me? Why would I care if Angelina Jolie goes there? What is she going to do? What is she going to do? Is she taking a bucket over to start bailing out water? I don't get it. Anyway, that's my cynical mind going. Africa seeks world's help as hundreds of millions face starvation. So we're getting more and more stories coming out about this. We're getting more and more organizations. This one, I think, was from Oxfam, to put the word out there, like, hey, the writing is on the wall for Africa. To be honest, I really don't know how Africa's going to get out of this. This is in the hundreds of millions of people that are going to die from starvation. And this isn't something that's like, oh, in 20 years I'm going to die. It's like here and now, 6 months, 12 months. That's when these numbers are going to start tallying up. I don't know how they could get out of it. I don't know, if the money that could be pumped in there would help, but I don't know if those countries that have that money, i.e. like the West, us, are really going to pump it in right now. Thinking about the world situation, apparently, unless Russia's invading you, you don't get money. That's the key. What? Russia's not invading you? Oh, it's just people starving. Do you need any Abrams? We can send you some Javelin missile systems, but you can't eat them? Can't you hunt with them? Wouldn't that help? Look, if you had a China or a Russia invade you, maybe you could work that in somehow. Can you just tell us that China's invaded you, and then we'll send you money? That's ridiculousness. Absolute ridiculousness. When push comes to shove, I think most Western countries and most Western people, we're not going to want to really forego anything, really, in order to help. Oh, there's some people in Africa. It's like I keep saying, like, Africa is the West's blind spot. It's like we don't want to look there. We really don't want to look what's happening there. And I think as a human being, we should be looking there. We should be looking really hard at that. Because if things keep going the way they're going, Africa could be the world eventually. Omnipresent said, mate, spent the last 10 years between Ukraine and Poland. Please believe me, you have no clue what you're talking about when it comes to the Russian Eastern European situation. Sure. Cool. Please believe me. I will believe you. Why not? I don't get up here and say, hey, I'm telling you what's going on. I get up here and say, hey, here's what's in the news and here's what I'm reading. And then I will say, hey, here's also my opinion of it, if I have an opinion on it. but that's what I'm seeing. But Omnipresent, would love to hear your thoughts on it. Grim Kartzi, hello to you. How you going? Magnitude 6 earthquake. We got another earthquake. This one hitting off Russia's far east coast on Kamchatsk Stary. My Russian's not so good. So, but yet another earthquake. Like I said, a lot of seismic activity that's happening at the moment. It's just interesting. Again, one of the things that often gets thrown out when I'm talking about weather effects and natural disasters and things like that is the rhetoric that we're getting rammed with at the moment, which is like climate change. And then now what we're starting to see is like, oh, there's a whole heap of seismic activity, earthquakes happening. How does that actually tie in? Does climate change, and if climate change is man-induced, as the narrative is saying, does that affect earthquakes? So why are we seeing an increase in earthquakes at the moment? It's an interesting one, but whenever they pop up in front of me, I like to throw it out there. Kazakhstan, obviously in the news a little bit at the moment, bit of conflict that's been happening there, but they're also to hold snap presidential elections in November. Not earth-shattering news, just another interesting one, and I think something that we should probably keep our eye on, like what's happening in this space around here. In the stands in particular, again, I think stands are one of those things where the West kind of goes like, oh, look what's happening over there. No, don't look too hard though. We don't want to really get into it too much. The stands I've always found fascinating. I found that entire region really, really interesting. The Central Asia areas. And these nations and how they actually think about themselves and how they operate. And I think we're starting to see some pretty interesting stuff coming out of there. So it'll be interesting to see what actually happens if we can get good news coming out about these presidential elections from Kazakhstan. But I'll be keeping my eye on that for sure. Savage the Wild, hey fella, how you going? Good to hear from you. Loving some of the content you're putting out, by the way, Savage the Wild. I've been sort of keeping half an eye out, and some of your posts, some good photography, good stuff that you're putting out there. Omnipresent on YouTube says, any thoughts in particular? No, just whatever your thoughts are. You seem to have an opinion here, and I would love to hear it if you want to put it out there. Jump over to Iran now. Iran, as I was talking about, has been having a lot of civil unrest at the moment. So a lot of rioting going on there, based around that was springing out of a young woman who was killed, arrested for an alleged hijab violation, and then allegedly was murdered whilst in custody, which was one of the reports that I was reading on it, at least. That's obviously caused a lot of civil unrest, protests, and riots. And now this story I thought was interesting because, I do like to talk about civil unrest because I feel that that's going to be something that's going to increase quite a bit within our world, and something we need to think about. Iran internet access reportedly restricted amid mass protests. So this is one thing that has been shown to happen all throughout the world during protests, in particular in more authoritarian governments. They have a tendency to do it, but it has happened in our countries. It has happened in Australia. It has happened in the US, that the internet can suddenly stop working. So in order to congregate a whole heap of people, you obviously need to communicate. So that's one of the things that governments can target and go like, right, shut down the communications. Also, maybe they don't want that information getting out there, like, shit, people are rioting, quick, we need to quell this, bang, stop communications going out there. And so that's actually happened here. They've seen the internet access has reportedly been very restricted in what people can and can't access and what they can and can't do with their phones and things like that. So, and the government definitely has the ability to do this. has the ability to shut down internet over a small period of time in an area. The other part of it is that has happened in the past, and this has definitely happened in the US during some of their 2021 civil unrest movements, was that so many people in an area are trying to upload video, talk to people, send photos, upload stuff to Instagram and things like that, that it actually, they cut the internet out themselves. So the internet becomes restricted through people using, but it's something to think about, definitely. Again, when, if you happen to find yourself in and around civil unrest issues, this is one of the things you need to look out for, that internet could be cut out, communications could be cut out. And this is one of the reasons why, if you're preparedness minded, you really want to be thinking about alternate communications at all times. One is none, two is one. So what other form of communications do you have? That's not two phones, by the way, because that's both using the same system. It might be like UHF communications or satellite communications or internet-based communications or something like that. Something that's going to work when one thing doesn't work. So cell network goes down, what else can I actually use? Grim Katzi says, that is one reason I'm working on getting my ham radio license, to keep in touch via radio if we can't use cell phones or internet. Great idea. It's something that I have been postponing for a while, and I will try and get it done, get my ham radio license by the end of the year. The intention being, hopefully, that when I'm doing these sort of sit reps and stuff like that, that I can actually also set up the ham radio and beam it out over the radio waves as well. I think that'd be kind of cool. But as a form of alternate communications, that's definitely something that I've been looking into, and increasing my ability just to use the CB, the citizen band here as well. So better radios, better antenna equipment, stuff like that. Something to think about. Belgium's having protests about, surprise, energy prices have peaked. And this last thing I would just talk about, that the UN head, the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, has come out and said the world is in great peril. So he, in his speech, he's painted a pretty shitty picture, really, of what's happening in the world. Quote, which is literally on fire, and has talked about like all the issues that we're having at the moment. And I just want to file this one under thank you, Captain fucking obvious. Like, do we need the UN Secretary General coming out and telling us like how shitty things are at the moment? The interesting thing is like what his plan is for meeting these challenges. His 12-point plan for what they're going to do to get us out of that. No, I'm joking. There is no 12-point plan. There was no plan. There was nothing actually really in any great depth talked about what needs to be done about the issue, which I think is interesting. So at the end of the day, what are you doing here? Like, you're the head of this United Nations, this alleged glorious conglomeration of peoples. Like, what's that power doing at the moment? What are you doing? Not that I want them to have power, but this would be a good platform to get down there and go like, hey, like, we're facing a food crisis where hundreds of millions of people will starve. Everyone should be growing their own food. We encourage people to grow their own food. You know what? UN's going to start sending out seed packets of organic seeds. Yeah, you can see where that goes wrong. This is the sort of stuff like, hey, has everyone packed their bug out bags just in case something goes wrong? You need to get out of there. All this sort of stuff. Where is this information coming from? Where is this information from anyone right now? Where are our governments going like, we really encourage you to take the time now while we have good access to the resources, while we have access to food, to maybe stockpile a bit of extra food, to maybe, while you have access to good nutrition, start working out your body, be fitter, be better prepared for the coming future. None of this information is coming out. this is a huge hole in in the marketing as far as I see it. Savage the Wild says, I wonder how many self-fulfilling prophecies are going to try and make things actually happen on the whole 9/24 date that's been going viral. Yeah, so I like someone asked me about this the other day on a SitRep. They're like, oh, what do you think is going to happen on the 24th of September? And I'm like, I don't know, Friday? That could happen. I've got an appointment in town. Is that what you're talking about? I'm not sure. What are you talking about? But yeah, there's this whole conspiracy thing that's going on at the moment. The 24th is like some big date. Yeah, I don't know. Could happen. Could also not happen. It's probably like more likely, I think, from a statistical standpoint, that something is not going to happen. But there's so much stuff going on in the world at the moment that you could arguably say, yes, the 24th of September, that's where everything went tits up. But you could also say you could paint that target around any arrow at the moment, because there's so many arrows that have landed in the ground. So it's like, pick a point. When was it? Like, who knows? I don't know. They might drop the fucking bomb on that day. King Charles III might pull off his mask and be like, I am a lizard, and start licking his eyeballs. I don't know what's going to happen. Anything could happen. Shelley208 on the YouTube says, ham is something I've put off also. I've had the info for a while, but it wasn't a priority. Yeah, I think really, like, ham radio, it's got a lot of benefits, definitely. I wouldn't say, if there are other things that you might want to concentrate on right now, like, go for those things. If you're building up your food supplies, if you're working on some other skills, ham radio should be in there. Communication should be in there, definitely, but it's not the be all and end all. I think it's just another arrow that you can add to your quiver, another brick in your wall of preparedness to make your house more solid. Yeah, I do the same, by the way, Shelley. I beat myself up about it all the time. Like, you've known about ham radio for years, for decades. Why haven't you done anything yet? And I just sit on my hands about it. It's just that little bit restrictive in Australia. There's only one organisation, and you got to go do the testing through them. But then again, it was the same thing with firearms. I had to go do testing, and then I had to go jump through these hoops, and then get this permit, and then buy this thing, and then get this thing, and then finally I could buy a gun. So anything worth doing, I guess, is worth doing through resistance. So it is something that I'll be working on, though. I only hope to get tacos, said Savage the Wild. That's probably the ultimate goal for me. Tacos, nachos, burritos, as long as they're in the world still, and coffee, I think we'll be okay. What would you recommend for communication prepping? Says Spice Girl 27, Spice Gal 27. Like I said, I was just talking about ham radios as alternate communications. I think that's probably something you want to think about, start getting into. Get the brain wrapped around that. There's some fantastic YouTube channels about ham radio now. Ham Radio Crash Course, I think, is probably one of the better ones out there. Other forms of communication, there's a bunch that you can look into as well. But that's kind of like, when I'm thinking about communications and I'm thinking about things that go wrong, I generally go, okay, well, how can I make things simpler? Not quite, let's get 2 tins and put some string in between it. Not that simple, but like ham radio is the idea, the technology has been around for donkey's years. So it's pretty easy for even a dullard like me to kind of wrap my head around it. Other things I think about are satellite communications and stuff like that. So I've got a Garmin InReach, which allows me to have some sort of functionality of satellite communications via text. Starlink as well is something that I think is worthwhile looking into. I actually rate Starlink. You can write it off if you want, but it has given me 6 times speed where I am. So Australia's got notoriously bad internet broadband internet. But yeah, these are all things that you can think about. But then also the plans that we make about communications as well. So I tell people this: no communications can be a form of communication, right? If you lose communications with someone, that could be telling them something, and you can have plans in place. So you can say like, hey, look, and I've got this with my mutual assistance group. Look, if things go wrong, I will try and communicate with you on phone. If I can't, I will try on this channel, UHF. If I can't, I'll try this channel on UHF. If none of these work, a timer basically starts, and I'll meet you at this point in time, at this point. If you're not there within X amount of window, then I'll move to the alternate point, our backup location, and I'll meet you all there, or I won't. If you don't rock up there within a certain time, that's when we need to start making choices like, well, do we go out and search for this person, or, are they done? It's those hard decisions at that point. But that's a pretty serious sort of plan that I'm talking about there for like really, really bad things happening. When we're just talking about communications generally day to day, I like to think, I grew up in the 80s, right? We didn't have mobile phones. When you told someone you're going to meet them at a time, you would pretty much just meet them at that time, at that point. Pretty simple, huh? Then in the military, when I went through the military, we called them rendezvous points, or RVs. So we would meet someone in a time window at that RV. So that's what I tend towards. I go, okay, mobile goes down. Can I reach back into my mind far enough to get back to when I was a child in the 80s and remember how we did shit back then, before the internet? Yes, there was a time before the internet. Gather around, kids. I feel like the old guy. Back in my day, we didn't even have the interwebs and your TikTokies and your Insta faces. None of that. Just rode our bikes all the time. But yeah, that's the sort of stuff you want to think about with alternate communications, I think. And if anyone else has got any other ideas about that, please let me know. Would love to hear it. Hello to Nuevo Mundo News from Chile. I got some friends in the US who originate from Chile. So, hola. Hope you're doing well. That is it for today. Thank you very much again for joining me. Obviously, a lot of things going on in the world at the moment, and like I said, some of it's good, some of it's bad, some of it we need to pump the brakes on a little bit and go like, hang on, what's actually going on here? But as I always say, generally speaking, if you're listening to this right now or watching me on whatever medium you are currently watching me on, then things are probably pretty good for you right now. It tells me that you've got connection to electricity. It tells me you've got connection to the internet. So you've probably got access to clean drinking water as well, and to food. Right now, my supermarket is still stocked with food, okay? And I can continue to keep building up my stores. I can go out and still work out and not worry about starving my body because I've got plenty of calories here. This is what we need to start doing. Just start preparing ourselves a little bit more. I'm not saying that the world is going to crash. I don't know if the world will collapse totally. I actually think there's a pretty good chance it will not collapse totally. I just think times will get a little bit tougher if we're on the current trajectory that we're on. So take this opportunity now. Do what you need to do. Learn the skills. Learn gardening now. Learn ham radio now. Shelley, I'm looking at you. All right. And keep me honest too. All right. It's now a race between you and me, Shelley. See who does this first. Take the Ride just jumped on. I'll have to re-listen to the show. I caught you at the end. New headphones. I couldn't get them to work. Hope you're all doing well in Australia. Hi from the Carolinas. Well, hello to you two from the Carolinas. Hope everything's well there with the changing of the seasons. Thank you, Spice Gal. Thanks, Savage the Wild. I'm always grateful for you for joining me. Thanks, Teen V. Thanks, Coronavirus. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Jsnoof. JSNNUF. I'm just Jsnoof. I don't know why that's funny. It's just a funny word. It's a funny word. Snoof. As always, gang, keep prepping. Keep getting yourselves ready. The world is not inherently a bad place, but bad things do happen, and we have the ability to best be prepared for those sorts of things. So use that ability. Until next time, everyone, stay safe, keep your head on a swivel, and Semper Paratus.